So, joining us again for our panel discussion is Bola Roteby. Thank you very much indeed from CCS Insight. But also joining us today is AI Director at BT, Dr. Zoe Webster. Hello, Zoe.
Hello, David.
Good to see you. We also have Principal Technology Partner at BT, John Vickery. Hello, John.
Hello, great to be back.
And Chief Technologist at Cisco, Chintan Patel. Hello. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, I think a good question to start with, it's one for the whole panel. We just asked our audience what they see as the biggest benefit to investing in emerging and transformative technology. So, with this in mind, how can investing and implementing this kind of technology help to create better customer experiences? We've seen the importance of customer experience. How can this tech help us to do that? Bola.
Well, one of the things that it can really do is, in fact, when you think about sort of mobile and video streaming and the fact that actually, people can take part and don't have to go to, the office or for instance, in banking. Nowadays, you can actually speak to your bank manager or even get your mortgage advice answer and do your mortgage meeting via, via video streaming. And that's actually quite nice because you're in a nice, nice at home, it's much more relaxed. And so that's actually much more of a kind of a really, sort of more pleasant experience, what it's like. And the other thing is that, as well as also going to sort of speak to the doctor and, some of those things are, sort of really important. So I think it's actually, looking at how video is helping to kind of like bring the home forward. The other side is, augmented reality.
Yes.
Sort of being able to look at, sort of, when we all sort of like, if you think about when we design our bathrooms or things like that, you could actually see what a bathroom looks like inside your home with some things already sort of overlaid, which I think is actually quite exciting. But great experience there.
Yeah, interestingly, the video streaming experiences, they were born at least in the last 18 months out of necessity because we were unable to visit our banks or whoever it is. But now that need in a way is gone, those experiences have still stuck around because we've realised how important, how great an experience they can be. Thank you very much, Bola. Dr. Zoe, in terms of tech and customer experience, guessing with an AI lens on perhaps, what are you seeing at the moment?
Well, I think as Bola just said, technology can help with that mode of interaction, make it easier for the customer to engage and for businesses to engage with their customers. It can also impact the content of that interaction. So using things like recommendation engines, you can be working out what it is the customer might want to see and you can show them products and services they're most likely to engage with, and that makes it easier for them and for you as a business. It can also build on top of what you might think of traditional services that the business is providing. So at BT, our telephony, for example, and a great example of how we're improving customer experience is through BT's Call Protect system. So that's being able to sift through, billions, millions of call records to find those that might be fraudulent, illegal, nuisance. And with AI technology, we can sift through that, find those patterns, and every week it's cutting out 25 million calls that are not reaching the customers. Now, in particular, for vulnerable customers who might be more caught out by nuisance calls or fraudulent calls, that vastly improves their experience. And of course, the AI can adapt, as Harmeen was saying, with the adaptability, can make sure they're keeping on track with the changing tactics of fraudsters.
That AI recommendation piece I think is really interesting, particularly in retail, and we're used in online platforms to seeing, other customers who bought this also bought this other thing as well. But we're starting to see that in-person, in-store experiences, again, with AI-capable assistance face-to-face. I think that's a really interesting space. Thank you very much, Zoe. John Vickery, hi.
Hello.
Tell me how you're seeing some of these technologies that we're talking about today. Improving customer experiences.
So the first thing that popped into my head was a B2B example, and thinking about the property market. So we've worked with a number of big landlords who manage multi-tenanted buildings. Okay. They manage business parks, science parks. So when they're being bold, investing in new technology like 5G, it's not only creating better customer experience for their existing tenants, it's also creating that environment that's attracting new tenants. So I've seen examples where pharmaceutical companies are looking to use the 5G and the great reliable connectivity on site to help speed up their drug testing processes. It might be a software developer firm who's like, actually, look at this business park, it's got great connectivity, great 5G. You know, we can build a great collaborative outside space to start looking at things like AR, collaborative gaming on the move, or mobile cloud gaming. So I think, businesses who are investing in technology are really helping other businesses in a B2B context.
Really interesting area there. Chintan, finally, customer experience. Where are you seeing tech making a difference?
Well, I think, online's become the new front line. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, tech plays such a fundamental role in everything that we do. Applications are the business, and, we use them in everything that we do. And so, from that perspective, organisations really only have one shot to get that experience right. We are far more adaptable in terms of how we'll shift brands, how we'll shift to other companies that don't provide us a better customer experience. And as that customer experience has become simpler, the back-end IT that many of us has to manage in this kind of cloud-first world where we don't own the environment that we are running our mission-critical applications on, we need to get visibility into that. And so having visibility and analytics and insights into infrastructure and applications end-to-end becomes even more important in today's world.
As they say in face-to-face communications, you only get one shot at making a good first impression. But of course, the same is in technology as well, particularly in a really competitive market like most online experiences and marketplaces are. Thank you very much indeed, Chintan. Let's take a look at the survey results. Talking about technology such as AI and 5G. Let's take a quick look at the poll result there. Despite the belief that emerging tech will help businesses achieve their key objectives, some leaders are still hesitant to invest. Why do you think that is? Well, you had this to say. You said that lack of knowledge and skills was top of the pile there about why there is this hesitancy to invest. Really interesting. Economic uncertainty also indexed quite high on there as well. And lack of relevance to my business. Interesting stuff there. So thank you very much indeed for your poll results. I'm going to throw that one out to the panel again, actually. What would you say to organisations who are hesitant about adopting technologies such as AI, such as technology we've been talking about? And how can this technology help to achieve their goals? Zoe, I'm looking at you. So, talking about AI, I'm going to come to you first of all with this one. There is this hesitancy. What would you say to try and overcome that?
Well, with AI in particular, with any technology, actually, one needs to think about the business outcomes and what the business needs to do to stay competitive. So that kind of gives you an answer. Whether technology, whether data has a role in that, that's something that you need to think about. So where, in particular, data has a key role, and you need to get insight from vast amounts of data, complex data about your customers, your own business, or whatever that might be, the outside world, then AI should be considered as one of the tools you could use to get more insight from data.
OK. Chintan, a lot has been said about digital transformation, about digitisation, and about how that can help to create new jobs, entirely new economies in some cases. And it also gives people a bit more flexibility and freedom about where they work, about how they work. But what about the technology that organisations are deploying to enable that, to embrace this hybrid working, flexible working, whatever you call it? What kind of technologies are organisations deploying right now to enable this good stuff?
Yeah, look, I think the last 2 years have shown us that actually, for the future of work, hybrid work is absolutely de facto. And, organisations across the world, we're seeing, employees telling them that they want flexibility, choice, they want the tools to be able to be, working from anywhere, and they want that choice. What we also see is that, we're all living on the internet. Our homes are the branch of one, and some of the technology that perhaps we've had hasn't been sufficient enough for what we need going forward. And so what we see is, every meeting going forward, 98% of meetings will have at least one remote employee or participant. Yeah. So we've got to cater for that from a technology perspective. Events are now hybrid. COP26, arguably one of the most important events we'll have this decade so far. We used WebEx technology to connect people, remotely from all around the world. Every single session at COP had a hybrid element to it, and partly because we needed to do real-time translation, so we have a more inclusive set of meetings. With that, we need to transcribe automatically the meeting notes. We needed to make sure that we can use AI, for example, to eliminate background noise, you know, because people are connecting from different places. And so, there's a lot of technology, and so dedicated kind of video technology is becoming important. But also, for those people that are not able to go back to an office, remember 60% of jobs around the world are not office-based. So it's not necessarily just about those who are in an office environment, but people who are in manufacturing floors, in transportation, etc. We've got to think about the whole spectrum of use cases and needs.
5G, John. This is one of the areas in the report where we've seen a lot of adoption, one of the biggest areas of adoption over the last 12 months or so. And I'm interested in what you see in terms of how people are getting value from this. In which areas are people starting to really take 5G and run with it and make interesting stuff happen? Particularly, I don't know, which areas you're interested in taking a look at, efficiency, perhaps?
OK. I mean, firstly, seeing that 5G is at the top of for transformative tech, the top of adoption is fantastic. I think it was 18%, but also 23% planning to invest in 5G technology. And I think one of the main reasons is it's not just a transformative technology in itself, it actually helps you get the best out of other technologies like AI, like mixed realities. So I'm seeing adoption in probably two key areas, and forget the hype, so forget a doctor in New York operating on a patient in London over 5G.
Makes good TV, though.
It makes good TV. It was great promotion to show what can be done. It is possible, but it's not a commercial application. What businesses are looking at is commercial applications in two key areas. Firstly, utilising the extent of the public network. You get a more enriched experience using 3D volumetric technologies, AR, 3D telepresence, etc. So having field engineers, you get a more reliable connection. So if you've got field teams, community nurses, maybe you've got surveyors doing insurance appraisals, being able to send that data and connect back to experts and share video in real time in a more reliable connection with a more enriched experience is actually helping businesses all over the UK, and we're seeing big adoption in that area, remote guided maintenance, etc. The second key area is for businesses who want to adopt reliable, maybe even mission-critical connectivity across their own estates, operational estates and campuses. Things like intelligent inspection and surveillance, so being able to deploy a reconfigurable set of cameras, body-worn cameras, cameras on drones, cameras on vehicles, being able to move cameras around because you're not reliant on fixed connectivity, and be able to even overlay that with AI, look at incident detection, traffic management, and you can even co-locate things like sensors. So you can start to collate all that data and be able to make better decisions about where you move people, where you move things. So those are the key areas, and we're seeing huge adoption in public 5G and private 5G.
And I really like how you're able to bring those 5G applications to life. And I want to continue that conversation with you, Chintan. Of course, when you talk about 5G, big numbers, big capacity, low latency, good density, even improved energy efficiency as well. How do you put that power and potential, though, Chintan, into practical terms? What are the kind of conversations that you have to bring this to life?
I'm as upbeat as John here about 5G and the potential. I think it's a very transformative technique. We're really just scratching the surface. But where I've really wanted to try and focus in on is really connecting the unconnected. Even here in the UK, we don't have universal broadband coverage. There are still 4% of the population that don't have any form of connectivity. So those places where, outside of the cities where we can't pull fibre, can we use 5G to actually provide connectivity to rural communities? And that's what we've been working on over the past couple of years. And, some of the use cases John talked about, we've been doing exactly that. So, whether it's drone surveillance of grasslands for cattle, looking at spectral analysis of where the best time and place is for that cattle to go and graze, whether it's putting sensors on salmon farms out in the Orkneys, UK's biggest food export, by the way, so very important to our economy. And so many other use cases which are really genuinely transforming the lives and those economies that perhaps have been left behind from the digital transformation. Even we've talked about AR, we've just announced a few weeks ago WebEx hologram. And that, I think, will give real-life capabilities, immersive capabilities, the types of things John has talked about in terms of allowing people to collaborate in completely new ways.
Yes, again, that metaverse conversation comes back into
Yep,
it again.
it
I think
does.
we'll be having a lot more chats about that in due course. Let's just take a look back at the last poll results again. And again, the question was, despite the belief that emerging tech will help businesses to achieve their key objectives, some leaders are still hesitant to invest. Why do you think that is? Lack of knowledge and skills. Again, almost a third of you saying that that is very much the case. And as mentioned earlier on, there's very much a part around knowledge and skills in the future in 2021 report. So, resistance of change. I want to come back to you, because an area, Zoe, that we spoke about, and actually, Bola, I'll throw this one to you as well. Productivity is another area that organisations are very, very keen to find ways to improve their productivity. AI, I get a feeling, can certainly play an important role there. How do AI and productivity merge, would you say?
It merges in a couple of key areas. So, first of all, things like scheduling, planning, optimization, these are things that can be automated, and those are part of AI. So, you know, sifting through data and coming up with the best or optimal schedules for something is incredibly useful in many contexts. At BT, we've been using workforce optimization for a number of years, and we're leading the way in that area. And we're now looking at taking that to other industrial sectors. So with that, what we've been able to do is to optimize and cut down the amount of time that engineers are traveling around while they're trying to meet the needs of customers. So while we can give customers tighter slots, so they don't have to hang around their homes all day, they know their engineer's coming in with a 2-hour slot, we can fit in 400,000 more slots per year. We can reduce that travel time 17% and improve well-being and reduce carbon emissions by 36,000 tonnes per year. So all that can be done using AI. And as I say, we're looking at taking that broader to other industries.
Anything else on the productivity and efficiencies around AI, Bola?
Well, I think Zoe said it really nicely, but I think one of the things is, and what Zoe was, sort of talking about was really about, getting some insights quite easily to kind of like, what we call, maybe predictive analysis, getting sort of ideas of patterns of, operations, so that you can actually identify things ahead of time, whether that's a problem or whether that's a typical, strategy, so that you can then do something about it. And that actually adds to being quite productive, also efficient. The other side of it is being able to use, in this, sort of the digital economy, data is king. It's the new oil, as everyone often talks about. So it's also about actually having good quality data and then being able to use other data to sort of bring it together. So like weather data to kind of like, and that can actually aid with productivity and efficiency, because you're actually taking information from all sorts of places to be able to home in on, a solution. So I think there's a lot there. Operations, being able to sort of look at the way that, you can improve your operations through AI. So, lots of it.
Kind of the network effect of data. The more data you get, you kind of get a multiplication effect, potentially, of the value that that data is able to bring to you. Really interesting stuff. We were talking a moment ago about how resistance to change is one of those key barriers in the survey to adopting new technology. Larger businesses particularly finding this to be true. So a question to all of our panel. Chintan, I'll come to you first of all. Why do you think this resistance to change is, and what do you say to your customers or leaders that you speak to help them overcome this resistance?
I think the first thing leaders can do is actually, start small. Not try to boil the ocean. Actually experiment. Take the time to look at what the market is doing, what's important for their business, how it will actually impact their customer experience. We saw that in the poll earlier of how important that is. I think also look at diverse teams to bring in new ideas. Your employees sometimes have the best ideas. Don't think you have to come up with those ideas. So whether it's collaborating with other industry partners, I'll just cite some of the work that BT and Cisco have been doing around building a transformation pack for our customers to jointly look at the steps that you should take, assess where you are, think about a small pilot, look at the business results that you can get out of it before you then scale something out. So there's some very good practical things organisations can do, and leaders can take a leaf out of some of those ideas.
A kind of proof of concept, proof of value for that. Interesting stuff. John, resistance. How do you push against that resistance?
So I think quite often you don't see the resistance. I've got a lot of experience speaking to business leaders. They're not out there with placards saying we don't want tech. It's actually passive resistance. They're savvy business leaders who are sitting there saying, actually, I might have been burned before with technology. I'm going to wait. I want evidence. I want to see evidence that this stuff works. So I think that it's probably best to look at the other areas that were listed. So the lack of knowledge and skills is the biggest one.
Yeah.
I think you start to address that. Lack of budget. Maybe business leaders can start to understand that this isn't all about upfront capex investment anymore, especially in 5G. A lot of this technology, when you're speaking to healthcare, they spend lots of money on specialist devices. This is consumer-grade technology, these handsets, these wearables. Originally, they were kind of developed for consumers, like Magic Leap, as an example, that now the whole business has pivoted to business because that's where the opportunity is. So I think, and also you can start to look at, rather than upfront capex investment for network, like building 5G private networks, as an example, you can move to more flexible subscription-type models. So there's a lot of flexibility around budget. Also, lack of knowledge and skills, I think, is about partnering and having the right technology partners. If you haven't got the knowledge and you can't wait for that recruitment, then speak to the right partners. All the experience and all the great solutions that we've developed, like Hyperbat. Remember last show we talked about Hyperbat,
the battery
manufacturer. Ericsson, great knowledge around the hardware. BT having fantastic knowledge around the network, building the network and the solutions. NVIDIA with their expertise in graphics processing, with the customer manufacturing expertise coming together to develop a solution where they're reducing rework by connecting design teams to manufacturing teams. Where previously they were sending emails and designs, things weren't being translated. They can now collaborate with mixed reality around a digital twin. And that makes it a lot more productive as a process, and make sure that those designs are translated and then they're getting it right first time.
And improve that confidence that they're able to get it right first time.
Absolutely. And so that evidence is going to help reduce and remove that resistance to change because they'll start to see the examples. It's quite hard it's a hard one, resistance to change, I think.
Indeed it is. Bola, I'll come to you next. In your role as an analyst, you've got a great view of lots and lots of different customers. You have, great privileged conversations with them. But do you see this resistance to change from where you sit? And how do you help those leaders with whom you speak to make the right investments decisions, even if it is indicative of a change within their organisation?
I mean, we do see that. In fact, I can safely say that in pretty much any survey we do, one of the top ones was lack of skills, which comes in. And I think John's right, and so is Chintan. It's the people side of things, because actually it's down to how people feel, in terms of either the lack of confidence, lack of knowledge. And I think one of the most important things we always talk about is communication. Is really kind of think about the communication and how you're actually expressing this to the organisation. Make people feel that they're part of the solution, part of the story, part of the journey. You have to take people with you. And how do you do that? That's a number of ways. You can actually, for the development team or even other teams, hackathons, get them sort of like engaged in a kind of fun way to kind of like just let them think about things, let the ideas come. The other side that people are sort of starting to do is getting people who are not necessarily developers, professional developers, but just normal business people, business professionals, to take part into building applications. And that means kind of investing in tools that are like what we call low code, no code, but allowing people to kind of lowering the barrier of building an application and then just letting them play with it, but also having that in a controlled environment so that, the good ones, you can at least know, oh, okay, that looks like it's a really great one. So it's about people feeling that they're engaged, that they're part of the solution. And I think if they're part of that, and then also putting in the training and the kind of education services, and that's got to be kind of self-service, then that will bring down that kind of resistance to change, and people will start to feel that they want to engage.
Engaging, empowering, democratising access, and those low-code, no-code solutions you speak to there are great tools for doing that, for getting everyone in an organisation who has an idea, access to the data, access to whatever tooling it is to turn that data into some insight or some action.
Totally.
Really interesting stuff. Zoe, finally on this one, and in terms of resistance to change, resistance to AI, people are bit scared of it, I guess. You know, maybe that's one of the areas. If you know an organisation's looking at investing in that area, they might be thinking, I don't quite understand it. It's this big thing, and I don't quite have a way to get a grip on it. What do you say when you're having these conversations?
And perhaps not to watch too many Hollywood films about AI as a start, but I mean, AI needn't be scary. I think it is really fundamentally about finding patterns in data and getting the machine to do that for you.
Yep.
So I think part of the resistance to change is that awareness and seeing it as magic and seeing it as that, you know, you can bring this in and suddenly it'll solve all your problems. It won't. It relies on people to set the challenge for the AI, to provide it with the right data, the representative, trusted data, and to develop and use the right algorithms that give you the answer you want. But really, it's all about just finding data, patterns in data, and doing that more quickly. I think focusing on the data and the foundations when you're looking at change, you know, making sure the data is there, and that's quite an investment, but that's so important, that will give you so much value in the longer term. But I think the big companies, keeping it simple, as Chintan was saying, there's a lot of technology behind the scenes. And for large companies, there's a lot of potential technical debt that you need to think about. So keeping it as simple as possible, making it's not change for its own sake, it's for a business outcome and focusing on that.
Super stuff. Thank you very much indeed for helping us with that resistance to change question. It's always a thorny one. When we talk about investing in technology and future-proofing organisations, the Future in 2021 survey showed that 34% of businesses do not plan to invest in any new emerging tech over the next 5 years. With that in mind, and before we bring the formal part of our panel to a close today, what would you say, panel, to these organisations, whether it be for, you know, the stuff we've been talking about, customer experience, productivity, efficiency, you know, boosting revenue, whatever the reason, why should organisations consider, Chintan, investing in these technologies right now? Why is now the time?
I think every business is a tech business now, you know, and the battleground for each and every one of us is that digital battleground. And so if you're not investing in it, your competitors definitely are. And I think organisations should definitely look at start small, as we've said, experiment, look at what's happening for your customers and how their interactions with you are fundamentally changing, and find opportunities to innovate.
Super stuff. John?
I would say if you're going to invest in anything, invest in some time to have a look at the technology available and what it's doing at the moment for businesses, because the evidence is out there. I think realistically 5 years is a long time not to make any big technology investments, and you're going to be, as Chintan said, at a disadvantage competitively. So you need to really have some concerns about that. And you know, you don't have to do everything yourself. You can speak to other people, and I said it in the last answer. I think partnerships is massive in any technology innovation. It's partnering that unlocks the value. So start to fire up some conversations, and maybe you can help find a good investment that's going to give you a return in the next 5 years. I'm sure much sooner than that.
Do you know, one thing that you said there strikes me so true, because I was having this conversation with another Chief Digital and Innovation Officer recently about one of the best things that they feel they can be doing is investing in time to understand these technologies, giving themselves space and not feeling always up against the wall and needing to make a decision straight away. Thank you very much indeed. Zoe, yes. What would you say?
Well, I mean, I think innovation's key, and we saw it earlier in the word cloud, that actually all companies did innovate to either maintain their market share or to grow it. And technology is one way to do that, alongside business models. We heard about Uber and Airbnb earlier. So, and if you're going to be looking at technology, then technologies like AI help to augment your reach, your capacity, and your ability to respond. As the world gets more complex, we're more connected, we need to respond very quickly to pandemics or climate change, wherever it might be. Technology can help you adapt to that and keep your business at the forefront.
Finally, Bola.
Well, I would say, actually, think about what we did 5 years ago. It's a very different world to what we are now. And in fact, if we think about all of us have just come through the last 18 months or 20 months pandemic, that, you know, when we think about how quickly organisations were able to transition to kind of keeping their business, keeping the lights on in their business. And I think that is fundamentally what underpinned that. That was technology. actually. It was things like cloud technology, it was communication networks. So I would say possibly to those organisations who aren't thinking about investing is to really think about, well, what's the next 5 years going to be? Where do you think you're going to be? And where do you think the market is? Because if you are not with the market and where your customers are, then you really ought to be thinking about your business.
We've got time for just a couple of very, very quick questions from our audience before we run out of time here. Thank you very much indeed. You are helping to shape our conversation today with your questions and with your poll results. And we've had a question that's come in from Darren. And I'm going to throw this one over to you, Zoe. It was a question I kind of wanted to ask myself a few moments ago, but I stopped myself. But thank you, Darren, for your question. My clients often can't distinguish between machine learning and true AI. What would you say is the difference or distinguishing features? And my quick bolt on to that is AI actually a helpful term when it actually represents quite a few different terms underneath it?
I mean, it does. It's a really broad area. I think often we talk about augmented intelligence because this is about enhancing what people can do, not trying to replace them. So, it's a term we've used for a long time. There are other useful terms as well. Going back to the question, it was a really interesting question. Machine learning is a form of AI. So by AI we mean, and true AI we mean, machines that can perform tasks we typically associate with human-level intelligence. So understanding human language, interpreting images of what's around us, planning and learning. So I would say machine learning is true AI. There's a lot of AI washing out there. So lots of claims by companies who have AI but don't. It's a much simpler form of technology. So one has to be quite careful. But really, if it's performing tasks that you typically need a person to do, I would say that's true AI.
Super stuff. Darren, thank you very much indeed for your question. I hope that was a good answer. Sounded good to me. Final very, very quick question. And Chintan, I'm going to throw this one over to you, but John, get ready to steal. With an ever-increasing dependence on digital connectivity, how can organisations ensure resilience? Is 5G a suitable bearer for mission-critical applications? This question's from Rob. Thank you, Rob. 5G, can we trust it?
Well, look, I think there's going to be a spectrum of technologies that are going to be important going forward in the future. 5G is going to be one. Technologies like Wi-Fi 6 are going to be here to use. Private 5G, as organisations think about that as an opportunity for their use cases. So it won't be one technology for everything, but I think it's for organisations to choose the right technology for the right use case.
John, in a sentence?
Private networks today, absolutely, 100% mission critical, ready to go.
There we go. What John and Chintan said. Thank you very much indeed. Sadly, we are out of time for our panel, but Bola, John, Chintan, Zoe, fantastic to speak to you. I hope we can carry on the conversation next time. A big thanks to you, of course, for your questions that have been coming in throughout our debates today. Great to see so many of you responding to our polls too. We managed to get through quite a number of your questions, and thankfully some of the questions also tallied up with what we had kind of planned to ask anyway. Keep them coming in for part 3 of today's show in a moment, but if we don't manage to get to all of your questions during the show, somebody from the team will get back to you afterwards. Thanks once again to our expert panel. Thank you, team. Thank you. Let's take a look at part 3 of today's show.